topic. What I thought I might do is just go through and give you the answers, and then the real reason for me being here is just to hear from all of you, find out what we need to be focused on going forward. And so let me turn this over to you after we go through the, are we needing some more chairs? I might also say Bobby is with me. He'll be taking notes for ideas you all have from our Topeka office, and Bill Rowe from our Topeka office. They're with me today. Okay, you have your handouts and would like to know the correct answer. Defense is 19% of the budget. Healthcare is 23%. Interest on the public debt is 6%. Foreign aid is 2%. Social Security is 20%. Unemployment is 3%. The earmarks and pork barrel is 0.4%. And welfare is 4%. So that means.
What did you say the defense was?
19.
And what was Social Security?
Social Security was 20. So that's always informative, a little exercise for people. Question number 2 is 100% of our gross domestic product is now borrowed. On question 3, 40 cents of every dollar is borrowed. On question 4, about $100 billion is for waste, fraud, and abuse. Question 5 is false. Question 6 is 70%. Question 7 is 51% of Americans. Question 8 is 70. Question 9 is 31%. And question 10 is 3, the first one. So I hope you learned something from that little exercise, and it may have spurred a comment or a question. So with that, I think I'd just like to turn it over to all of you and find out what questions you might have, find out what advice and counsel you have for me to take back to Washington. And I know this group won't be shy, so we'll just go ahead and get started.
On whose opinion is question number 5 false? That if we roll back the Bush tax cuts for all Americans, we could balance the budget. I'm not saying that we could balance the budget, but it could go towards balancing the budget.
Oh, okay. I think these are all just fact-based questions. I mean, so it's no opinion. It's based on just the actual numbers. But I think the reason we threw that on there is there are some that believe that simply if you just roll back, eliminate the Bush-Obama tax cuts, that would balance the budget. And unfortunately, it doesn't.
Towards balancing the budget. It might not
certainly
fulfill the budget balance, but it would certainly help.
Absolutely.
I have a question. I've been dying to talk to you.
Okay.
And I called your office and listened to all those phone calls. I want to know, you're so willing to cut back Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, have cuts. Are you willing to go to a minimum wage job with no benefits and no health care? Would you be willing to take that so you could
Help balance the budget?
No, but you bring up some great questions because I don't, how old are you? Do you mind my asking? Are you over 55?
I definitely feel well, yeah.
Okay. Well, then your Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid.
It doesn't matter. I just wanted to know if you're willing to take your cut for the company, for the country too.
Well, sure. I think we've cut our budgets. We've cut.
No, we're not talking about the budgets. We're talking about the salaries of our representatives and senators and the perks that they get. How much are you willing to take a cut?
Yeah, and I think everything's on the table. Like when we did this last bill, across the board cuts are on the table if no agreement is reached by this committee. There'll be probably about 10%.
But I bet all your salaries won't be on.
Everything is on the table at this point.
Oh, well, and also I
I
have
haven't
just
heard anything from the Republicans about that,
About what?
the tax cuts for the representatives and senators. I never heard that mentioned when you were up there arguing with President Obama.
It's probably because it's so minute. I mean, we have a $3.1 trillion budget. And so
Well,
what we're trying to do is solve the problem.
Everything counts.
Right, but we're not going to solve the problem until we do talk about things like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Those things are the drivers of the debt. They make up 60% of the budget, and so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get our fiscal house in order unless we have a grown-up discussion about those. And we tried to do that by setting aside anyone 55 and older, no cuts for those folks.
Well, how about all those people under 55? They have paid into Social Security for at least 25 years.
Yeah, you're looking at one who is pushing 50, and I'm happy to have this discussion because what people don't realize is like Medicare, for example. People on average take out 3 times what they put in. And while I'm not willing to cut the 55 and older crowd because we have made this promise all their life, they've planned accordingly. You can't pull the plug on somebody at this point. Those of us that are pushing up against the 55 deadline, I've got time to react. I can make different plans and plan accordingly. It's not like we're talking any major changes.
Yes, but you're well taken care of because you will, as a representative of the United States, will be taken care of.
How so? If I were to be thrown out of office next time, I am not there long enough for my pension plan. I get 0. I'm in the unemployment line.
Oh, I think not.
I just have one more question, then I'll be quiet.
Okay.
I want to know how come you signed a contract with Rover?
Oh, a pledge. Yes, because I don't believe that the revenue side is what's wrong with the American fiscal mess. When you look at revenues over time, our revenues settle in about 18% of gross domestic product. No matter whether you raise taxes, lower taxes, that's where they settle in. It's the spending side of the ledger that's out of whack. It has consistently gone up. It's about 24%. That's how you end up with a $1.5 trillion deficit every year. You spend more than you take in, is because the spending has gotten out of control. And that just skyrockets in the out years because of many of our health care
But I
programs.
think you went to work for us, not signing contracts and stuff up there to,
Who in here doesn't think they're paying enough income tax?
I don't
Will you
think
raise
the
your hand?
wealthy are paying enough income tax.
Okay, well, that's a different deal. See, nobody wants to pay more taxes, and Republicans in their budget passed fundamental tax reform, which addresses, I think, what you're getting at, and that is the GEs of the world. How do they pay no taxes? And so in our budget, we have fundamental tax reform, which broadens the base, flattens everything out, eliminates all the loopholes and the tax expenditures, and that's how you get it to be revenue neutral. You get rid of all the tax expenditures, and you broaden it out, and you get the 51% of Americans that aren't paying any individual tax back to work, back on the payroll, and so that's where we're going with tax reform.
Did you happen to read Warren Buffett's editorial yesterday? It's titled, "Stop Coddling the Super Rich." And that's what he's requesting of Congress. That Congress do the responsible thing and raise taxes on the wealthiest that can afford it, because their taxes have gone down and down and down. Ours have either stayed the same, gone up, or we do not get the benefits that they do.
Isn't that just what I said? Eliminate the tax loopholes.
I'm not talking about tax loopholes, I'm talking about their tax
Well, how do you
rate.
think GE doesn't?
I'm not talking about that corporation, I'm talking about the super rich individuals as compared to us.
Statistics will show that people that take advantage of the tax expenditures are the very wealthy. And so how you get the middle class to stop carrying the entire load of our tax system, which is what's happening today, is you have to make fundamental reforms. And I think that's what has to happen if we're gonna get this economy going again.
And there are job creators.
There are job creators, we need to get them going.
Yeah, I have two questions. On your question number one, I thought it was interesting. You said only 20% is paid out of the federal budget for Social Security. So why is everybody saying it's going to break the country?
Well,
And secondly, how much income is also coming in toward that 20% from Social Security?
It's the Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Those things, they usually travel as a pack. And what I call autopilot spending are those things. The things that are in law that we just have to cut the checks for. We don't appropriate the funds for every year. Those are the drivers of our debt. They make up the greatest portion of our budget, and we never even talk about those. And the reason Social Security is near bankrupt, because like Medicare is bankrupt in 8 years. Does anybody plan to live more than 8 years?
Well, you said,
we probably need to
just say that Medicare is building that 20%?
Excuse me?
Did I understand you to say that Medicare is building this 20% on question one?
Right. This is 20%, 20%, and then there's another 20% in like unemployment and interest on our debt that are the primary drivers. And so some of us believe that we shouldn't bankrupt those systems because in 8 years there's going to be a whole lot of people that are going to be expecting Medicare or Social Security or so we're trying to, I guess, shore them up and save them for the next generation. And the reason they're bankrupt is because every time the federal government has done what they're doing now, spend more money than they take in, where do you think they rob the money from?
Yes.
The Social Security Trust Fund.
The government is really just ruining our Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid.
Absolutely. It's already been ruined over, and again, you're looking at...
They borrow money and they never put it back in.
And you're looking at somebody, the reason I ran was I was just as angry with Republicans as I was with Democrats for spending money that they didn't have. I mean, that's the whole reason I went there. You cannot run a business this way. You can't run your personal finances this way. Who in the world thought the federal government could run their business this way? It's got to stop. Absolutely has to stop.
My second question I have is on question number 7. I hear this all the time. 51% of Americans pay no income tax. And I'm curious how much of the income of America does that 51% have compared to the other 50%? I've heard that maybe they only have 10% of the income, and the other 50% have 90% of the income. So is that kind of that's kind of a loaded question. And it acts like the poor pays nothing, but I think the poor pays more of their income than anything on taxes.
Well, I think you've made a major leap that you shouldn't make. Why do you think those are the poor people? It could be the very wealthy having access to high-powered tax attorneys, high-powered lobbyists that get tax deductions for them. So I think that's where you start off wrong. You're not talking about that 50% being the poor.
Do you have any stats that tells us how many of them are illegal?
We don't, but that's, another issue that we would like to see addressed in Washington. But I'm not optimistic. I mean, if I had to give you a handicap on that, again, the president, the problem we have is, I was upset with Republicans when they had unfettered power in Washington. They spent too much money and they forgot why we're there. I spent my first 2 years with Democrats having unfettered power, and they gave birth to this failed stimulus and Obamacare and cash for clunkers and bailouts and Dodd-Frank. They took over the financial, and that is a recipe for disaster. And so now we have a divided government, and quite honestly, there are just different ideologies at work here, and there is nothing much that we can find common ground on. Amnesty is one of them. Republicans that have control in the House are not going to support amnesty, and that is the only thing the President and the Democrats in the Senate are going to go for. So, I think at this point, the expectation should be, if you're a Republican, Republicans in the House can stop bad stuff, but they can't turn it around. They can't turn anything around without the help of the Senate and the president, and they're never going to agree with us. So, you know, I guess people would call that gridlock, and while gridlock is not good,